Today we're going to be having a look at the first draft set of plans for our 1920s renovation project. Hiya folks, welcome back and Happy New Year as well. I'm going to get straight into it. Let's have a look at the plans that we've come up with, our first draft set of plans for what we're going to be doing with this 1920s semi-detached property. So just to give you a quick reminder of what we're dealing with at the minute. So all I've done here is I've very roughly marked on the neighbouring properties. So this house on the left isn't technically attached to our house. There's obviously the garage has been built down the side here at a later date, but when the houses were built, this would have obviously been detached from our house, but our house is semi-detached as it gets called in the UK. Semi-detached basically means that this wall here is shared with our neighbouring property here, so it's like two houses kind of joined together. It's a very common way that houses are built in the UK. Don't ask me why we have so many semi-detached houses. I have no idea, but maybe you can let me know in the comments. But yeah, semi-detached houses in the UK is just a very common thing. At the back, neighbouring properties have already had extensions, so I've just wanted to roughly show those. Actually, this one is completely incorrect because their extension comes out much further, and actually their house is set back from our house, so it's not the best of ideas. Technically, I think this house here is actually kind of set back a bit more like that, and then their extension, I might as well sort it very quickly just to show you. Their extension more kind of comes like that. It's quite a, I haven't measured their extension, but it looks much bigger than 3 meters. I think it is closer to 4 meters, but it's just to give you a vague idea of what other properties have done. The adjoining property here has just got the single story, well in fact this has done pretty much what we're planning on doing. So they've got the full width single story extension out the back, and they've built on top of the garage as well. So this is our property as it stands at the moment. And you can see we've just got the kind of 3 small bedrooms, and I'm not going to bother showing you downstairs on this one. I had a couple of people asking about the garden as well, how big the garden is. Well, the plot is 10 meters wide, and it's about 48 meters from the back of the house down to the river. So it's a pretty big garden, so nearly 500 square meters, the back garden. Also, a couple of people were asking about flooding and whether or not that would be a concern. We lived in this area not far from here at all during the last big floods back in 2008, and there was also a thing called Thunder Thursday as well, but 2008 were the really big floods, and the water didn't come at anywhere near house level. The river is at least, I would say, 2 meters lower down than the properties, and what you've also, and I'll work it out exactly how much lower the river is on a future episode, so don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, because I'm going to be taking you through every step of this renovation project from square one, and you don't want to miss any of it, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. But yeah, I will be working out exactly how much higher the property is from the river on a later episode, so watch this space. I would say it's at least 2 meters, possibly more, and for the river to flood to that degree, I mean, it might flood the bottom of the garden, but for it to flood enough for it to hit the house, there's going to be bigger concerns. You know, that would be like the whole of Gosforth would have to be flooded for that to happen. And the other thing is as well is back in 2008 there were issues with this river, and there's been remedial works done since. There's been extra flood prevention systems built in, and it's all been dredged, and they've done a lot of work to hopefully prevent any flooding similar to what happened back in 2008 from ever happening again. That said, I would be a little bit uneasy about building a timber framed structure right at the bottom of the garden for example. So yeah, you just have to be kind of use a bit of common sense with it, really. But apparently the only other flood that I had a chat with neighbours, and the only other flood that neighbours are aware of was back in 1948, and even then it didn't reach the houses. So yeah, flooding I'm not particularly concerned about, but as I say, I would be a little bit nervous about putting anything too close to the river. Now, we do have a couple of requirements from this project. We definitely want wood-burning stoves in at least one room because we're going to have a lot of free wood and we might as well make use of it. Wood-burning stoves are great if they're used properly. Read up on them. They're a very clean way of burning wood as long as the wood is getting burnt properly and it's properly seasoned and dried out wood. The problem with wood burning stoves comes when you start using wood that hasn't been dried out properly, basically. In terms of other stuff that we need, I need some form of workshop where I can keep all my tools and do my woodworking, and apart from anything else, I'm going to need tool storage for while I'm doing the renovation. So I'll definitely need a workshop of some description. I don't need a workshop as big as the workshop that I had in the new build, but I do need somewhere to kind of keep my tools and things. I also would like to get my drum room back. If you haven't watched previous episodes, please do, because this will make a bit more sense. But I do play the drums and I need somewhere soundproof to keep my drum kit. We also have a piano and we're going to have to think of somewhere to keep the piano. And of course, we're going to make good use of this garden as well. We really want to try and grow as much fruit and veg and things as we possibly can. I'm not going to say that we're going to be anywhere near self-sufficient, but, you know, we'll see where that goes. So let me take you through what we are planning on doing to this place. We are up to our 5th iteration of these plans now. We've come up with a lot of different designs. We do have a budget to consider, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail over on the member zone. But we don't have an infinite pot of cash to spend on this project. So there's certain things that we would have loved to have done, and we're just not going to be able to do it. There's not going to be money in the pot to do literally everything. Let me take you through it all, and then we'll chat about it a bit more after. But don't take this as being 100% set in stone. We still need to talk to the architects about this, but this is kind of our draft idea of what to do to the place, and then we'll have a chat with the architects, get through planning permission, and then hopefully work will start by kind of springtime. But there's loads of other stuff to get on with in the meantime. So there's 2 parts to the extension, really. There's going to be a big extension out the back, 10 metres wide, 4 metres out, and then we'll be extending on top of the garage as well. I'll talk more about upstairs very shortly. We'll start with downstairs and what we're planning on doing down there. So quite a few of you got to the same place as we did in the comments and suggested effectively just taking the whole back of the house off and extending into a big open plan dining room and living room area, which is pretty much exactly what we're going to do. We are going to keep this wall in here between the existing living room and what was the kitchen. We don't particularly want to take it out because, well, I'll show you once we've got furniture in, it kind of makes sense to keep that there. But what we will have is a big open plan kitchen diner area at the back of the property here, a utility and downstairs loo over on the left hand side here. The garage, the existing garage, will be pretty much as is, although it may all end up getting rebuilt from scratch. That might be easier than underpinning it and then cobbling out the brickwork for the first floor. We'll see what the architects say about that. There will need to be steelwork across these openings here to support the upstairs walls of the house, obviously, but that shouldn't be too intrusive. If we shove some furniture in, it'll all make a little bit more sense. So, living room, pretty much same as before, but obviously now it flows out into an open plan dining room and kitchen area. And the dining room area will nicely kind of flow out into the back garden as well. We'll have like decking and things at the same flooring level and bifold doors on the back here with any luck. The kitchen design isn't set in stone, but you do have to come up with kind of a rough idea of how you're going to lay things out, because obviously it's going to affect where this window goes, it's going to affect where the bifold doors start and end, it's going to affect where this doorway goes, it's going to affect the plumbing and electrics, so you do have to have a vague idea of the layout, and this is roughly what we've got in mind. So a sink overlooking the back garden, big double oven over on the right hand side here, hob and extractor over on the left there, island in the middle, and an absolute requirement is a big American style fridge freezer, which would be housed in a unit over this kind of side here. Piano to the left of that. The reason for the piano being over this side is mainly for noise. There was a consideration to maybe put the piano in the dining room, well, what will now become a study at the front of the house here. You could also think of this room here as being a fourth bedroom. If we did ever think about selling the property, we could market that as a fourth bedroom downstairs at the front, because, and I'll come to that very shortly, we are not going to fit 4 bedrooms upstairs, but that is fine. This little bit just over on the left here, this is where the electrics come in here, so there'll be some sort of unit built along here. Probably a bespoke wooden unit of some description to hide all of the electrics away, but also make sure they're nice and easily accessible as well. Utility area at the back here, so we'd probably just put the washing machine underneath a tumble dryer. Sink, boiler at the back. We'll talk about central heating in a bit more detail on a future episode, but we are going to go for a combi boiler with underfloor heating everywhere downstairs and traditional radiators upstairs. Feel free to shout at me in the comments, but we have considered all options. It would take me a long time to go into that, so I'll save it for a future video where we'll talk about the central heating in a bit more detail. But trust me, we've looked into every option that's available, really. And then onto the first floor, and the logical thing obviously is to build on top of the garage. We did initially look at potentially building out the back here as well, but it was going to be prohibitively expensive, and the amount of extra space that you got for the cost wasn't really going to be worth it. So we'll definitely build on top of the garage, but we're not going to build at first floor level out the back. We'll just keep it as a single story extension out the back. We've obviously got plenty of garden space to play with, so we're coming out 4 meters, which I think is fine. We don't really need to come out much further than that. If you're not aware, in the UK we'll have a thing called permitted development, and I think under permitted development you could potentially come out 3 meters without planning permission, but there are various caveats to that. But this is all going to need planning anyway for building on top of the garage, so it really makes no difference. So 4 meters is fine at the back. We are going to keep it as 3 bedrooms upstairs. Again, we tried to work out ways of getting 4 bedrooms in upstairs, but it wasn't doable. You'd end up with 4 tiny bedrooms, and it was a little bit pointless. What we would rather have is turning the 3rd bedroom, which was over here, turning that into a large master bedroom with a big window that overlooks the back garden. What we would also do is inset this wall here a little bit. We talked a little bit about what walls are structural and which ones aren't in the loft video, but the general consensus is that this wall here, which was going across here, is not a structural wall. It does need a little bit more investigation, but the plan at the minute is to basically take that wall down, move it along a little bit to give enough room to put a bath over on the left. And why are we missing sinks? There we go, sorry about that. You can actually see the sinks now. These little yellow and red squares that you'll see around the property, they're just marking where wastes are potentially going to run. Not set in stone yet, but it's just kind of thinking out loud as to where the plumbing runs are going to be. But doing this, just moving this wall a couple of foot to the left, it doesn't eat into this bedroom that much, and it allows a proper bathroom here with the toilet in the bathroom, and that means that we can get the toilet out of this pointless little room at the front, and it means that we can turn that into a storage area. You know, storage is always a very, very useful thing. You can never have too much storage, and that gives a nice family bathroom at the back of the property there. And then obviously our main master bedroom here, leading to an ensuite with a double shower at the front. Bedrooms 1 and 2 will stay pretty much exactly as they are. They are absolutely fine. But I think that is about it in a nutshell. Now, what I'm not going to go into in a huge amount of detail in this video is the garden, but we have had to plan out the back garden to a degree, just so that we can work out things like what the view is going to be like. We will be building an office in the garden, kind of over here-ish, and that will have a window overlooking the bottom of the garden and overlooking the river and whatnot. But we'll talk about that in a future episode, because the garden has actually needed quite a lot of planning to work out what we're going to be doing in the house, because the planning of the garden does affect the design of the house. But what this has allowed us to do is to kind of visualize what our views are going to be like from within the house itself. and I think this is going to work pretty well. For example, we wouldn't want the outbuilding to be like here, because that would block all of your views of the garden from the bifold doors and from the dining room area. So we're having to consider all of this at this stage of the planning process, and also things like what's the view going to be like out of this window. So again, we don't want this office building to be too close to the house, because it's going to kill all of the views that we bought the house for. But we'll talk about the garden in a lot more detail in a future episode, because that in itself is a topic in its own right. Anyway, so that is it in a nutshell. Let me know in the comments what you think. As I say, it's not 100% set in stone yet, but a lot of thought's gone into this of how we're potentially going to do it. We're up to, as I say, our 5th iteration of plans now, and it's time to get this in front of an architect and get the planning permission through. Now, do bear in mind that you're following this pretty much in real time, so please don't expect any of this work to happen like straight away. This is, as I say, probably a 2-year project that you're going to be following along with here, but I've got a lot to do before that to get the house even ready for starting the building work. So watch this space and we'll see how we get on, and we'll see what sort of surprises we'll run into. Anyway, that's it for now, folks. Thank you once again for all of your amazing suggestions of what you would do with a property like this. Do bear in mind that obviously this is very personal to us and how we live, and everyone lives in a different way, you know, so you might have different ideas of how you would lay things out, and that's absolutely fine, but I think this is going to work pretty well. We'll have put together a very rough budget for this project, and it's over on the member zone if you're interested in that kind of thing. Nothing is set in stone yet, but it's good at this stage to kind of get a vague idea of what we're likely to be spending on this. It's not a cheap project, but yeah, we'll see how we get on. Link in the description below if you would like to follow along with some of the more niche kind of behind the scenes stuff. For now, all that remains to be said, obviously, is Happy New Year, folks. Have an amazing 2021. Lots planned. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you next time. Tatty bye!